What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another video presented by Spartan Fitness. This is going to be the first part to a series of videos entitled How We Get Fat and How to Fix It. So I'm going to try to teach this at a student's level, and so first we got to go over some basic terminology so you can follow me later on in the videos. I'm going to break down the exact biochemical and hormonal response to specific macronutrients. In order for you to understand that, we're going to have to go over some basic terminology so you know what a macronutrient even is, because most people don't. So this first part is going to go over terminology, and then the second part might go over some of the actual processes that happen. If you want to learn how to reverse, stop, or prevent this from happening in your body, then you're going to have to know the biochemistry as a response to specific macronutrients. So follow me, and we're going to break this down as simply as I possibly can, okay? First of all, the terminology macronutrient, or shortened macro, is a specific category that food goes into as far as what it does inside the body. So, a macronutrient is either going to be a carbohydrate, a protein, or a fat. So what is a carbohydrate? Well, a carbohydrate is any substance that readily turns to sugar in the blood, or glycogen, glucose. One of those things. So if a substance readily turns to sugar in the blood, it's going to be in the carbohydrate category. Now, don't get confused. Some foods do have all three macronutrients in them, but they are categorized based upon where the majority of the calories are coming from. So a substance like oats, regular rolled oats, is going to be categorized as a carbohydrate because there's 27 grams of carbohydrates per serving. And only 5 grams of protein and I think 3 grams of fat. So the deposition of calories is coming primarily from carbohydrates, although it does have proteins and fats in it. It's going to be considered a carbohydrate. So carbohydrates are a substance, again, that turns to sugar in the blood and that the body can use for fuel. Not only muscularly, but fuel storage in the liver in the form of glucose. So that's what a carbohydrate is. Carbohydrates are 4 calories per gram. And that's how we figure out how many calories are in any specific food, because we just do the math. We see how many grams of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats there are, and then we do the math based upon how many calories per gram there are in a macronutrient. So that's carbohydrates, 4 calories per gram. The next one is a protein. And proteins are used in the body to repair tissue. Now, our fingernails are made from protein, our hair is made from protein. Our muscles, our ligaments, our tendons, and all our organs are made of protein. On a cellular level, that's the building block to human cells. So whether we're repairing damaged cells or whether we're producing new cells, protein is required to do that. Protein is also 4 calories per gram. So for every 1 gram of protein, there's going to be 4 calories. And we'll get later on into that. And that's what protein does. Protein repairs cells or it produces new cells in the body. The last one is fats. And fats are used in the body to produce hormones. Most notably, the sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. All those are synthesized from fats. As a matter of fact, testosterone is a form of cholesterol. I'll probably not get too into that so I don't confuse people, but fats are required by the body to produce adequate amounts of hormones so that we are healthy. So fats are required. So to follow up, carbohydrates turn to sugar, which our bodies can use for fuel. Proteins build muscle. They build organ tissue. And any cell that's damaged, it helps repair those cells or create new cells. Fats are 9 calories per gram. It is the highest gram for gram calorie out of any of the macronutrients. And fats go to produce hormones inside the human body. So now that we've cleared that up, we can move on and go over some basic stuff that has to do with the biochemical hormonal response to each of these macronutrients. So we just learned what a macronutrient is, what a protein is, what a carbohydrate is, and what a fat is. Now we're going to go over some new definitions. The new definition is going to be insulin. And insulin is a hormone secreted by the pancreas that regulates the storage of glycogen in the liver. And it also excels the oxidation of sugar in all cells that use glycogen for fuel. So, insulin is what takes sugar out of the blood. So it's important to know that when blood sugar gets too high, it becomes toxic to our bodies. And our bodies don't like to have a lot of sugar in the blood. So if the blood sugar gets to a toxic level, what the body does is it secretes enough insulin to remove that sugar from the blood. Now, when the sugar is removed from blood, it can either go to the liver to be stored as fuel, or it can go to the muscles to be used as fuel. Those are the only two options that I'm going to go over right now. There's another process later on, but that's what insulin is. So, if we were to break that down just a little bit more, when you give high blood sugar, you're in a toxic state. So when sugar rises in the blood, that equals an insulin release. When your body releases insulin, blood sugar goes down. So in essence, what our bodies are supposed to do is when blood sugar gets too high, our bodies release insulin. Insulin then takes the blood sugar down. So it takes sugar from the blood and either puts it in our muscles or it puts it in our liver to be stored as fuel. Those are the two things that happen once your blood sugar gets too high. So that's what insulin is, and that's what insulin does. So I hope you're following me so far. The next hormone we're going to talk about is glucagon. And glucagon is a hormone that's also secreted by the pancreas that stimulates the increase in blood sugar, opposing the action of insulin. So we already know that insulin lowers blood sugar, and now we're going to figure out that glucagon raises blood sugar. And it does this through a process of breaking down glycogen in the liver, which is a longer chain of sugars, and turning that glycogen into glucose, which can then go into the blood and go into the muscles to be used as fuel. So, as our bodies indicate that blood sugar is too high, it releases insulin to lower blood sugar by taking that blood sugar either to the muscles or to the liver. Okay? Now, in opposition of that, when our blood sugar is too low, our glucagon release is stimulated, and what that does is it causes our livers to release glucose, turning it into fuel for the body. So the blood sugar would then elevate when the blood sugar is low. So blood sugar would get low during times of fasting or during times of intense exercise. When there's no more available sugar in the blood or in the muscles, the liver would stimulate the release the pancreas would stimulate release of glucagon, which would stimulate the liver to secrete glucose to be used as fuel. So this is the opposing action of glucose. So insulin decreases blood sugar, whereas glucagon increases blood sugar. Hope you follow me so far. Okay, so if you follow me so far, we went over what a macronutrient is, what a carbohydrate is, what a protein is, and what a fat is, and what those things do in the body. So now we're going to further illustrate the effects of the insulin and the glucagon as a response to those individual macronutrients. So, what we know is that there is a response from the insulin for every macronutrient, but some is so low that it really doesn't count. Now, if this dotted line represented a dangerous level of blood sugar, then as you can see, it would be near impossible to ingest enough fat or protein to take the blood sugar to a dangerous level, requiring a lot of insulin to be secreted to remove that sugar from the blood. Carbohydrates, however, have the ability to raise the blood sugar to such a high level that the body has to respond by releasing insulin. And once the body releases insulin, it takes the sugar out of the blood. Now, what happens to that sugar is the part that most people don't realize. So, if we eat too many carbohydrates, our bodies are going to be required to use insulin all the time to take that sugar out of the blood. Because, as we went over before, blood sugar is toxic at a certain rate. So, I would try to illustrate exactly what happens when you're eating too many carbohydrates all the time. Okay, so first, when you ingest carbohydrates, your body wants to make sure that your muscles are topped off. So it first goes to fill the muscles up with sugar. So as we ingest carbohydrates, it goes to the muscles. And we're going to picture this as a bucket. And we're going to picture the excess as spillover into another bucket. So as the body releases insulin and takes the sugar out of the blood, it first tries to go to the muscles. So eventually, if you ingest enough carbohydrates, the muscles become full of sugar, okay? Now that doesn't mean there's not more storage available. The next place your body wants to store sugar is the liver. So once the muscles are topped off and they're full, the sugar pours over into the liver. Now, eventually, if you ingest enough carbohydrates, the liver becomes full as well. Now, the next step is what people really don't know about. Once the muscles are full and once the liver is full, what do you think your body does with all that sugar? Well, I'll tell you, it converts it to body fat. So that is our last storage. If the first bucket spills over into the second, and the second bucket spills over into the third, we're going to start to have a buildup of body fat. So, as we said, this is going to be your muscles. This is going to be your liver. And this is going to be body fat. That is the process by which our bodies produce fat at a high rate. Now, if you eat too much fats or too much protein in an excess level, your body can, by all means, convert those two to fat as well. However, the process to convert carbohydrates to fat is a much easier process for the body to do. Enzymically, it can create body fat out of sugar faster than it can from protein and faster than it can from fats. Okay, so far we've went over a lot, and I know this is going to be very complicated, but I want to take this just a little bit further. The next term we're going to study is going to be glycemic index, or GI. Now, the glycemic index is the measure of the effects of carbs on blood sugar. Now, what that basically is the higher of a number of a glycemic index that a food has, the more insulin more rapidly needs to be secreted by the body, whereas the lower glycemic index of a carbohydrate means that there's not going to be such an immediate, dramatic response of insulin to an ingested food. So what that basically means is some foods are so high in the glycemic index that the body has no choice but to store those foods as fat. Now, for a long time, there's been a blurred line in the industry of what exactly those foods are. But it's very simple to me, and I'm going to spell this out for you. High glycemic index foods have no choice but to bypass this process and go straight to fat storage. So what that means is when you ingest sugar, and it's sugar, then your body has little to do to break it down because it's already sugar. So that's going to cause a dramatic spike in insulin. Sugar in any form, whether that's just table sugar or honey or maple syrup or fruits even, for that matter, can have a dramatic effect on your body because all those things have a high glycemic index or an impact on the elevation of blood sugar and a response of insulin. So, if you eat a high glycemic index food, it is going to bypass this entire process and go to fat storage. So that is the danger, and that's why all foods aren't created equally. Some foods are going to bypass checking the muscle, checking the liver, and go right to be stored as fat because they require so much insulin to be removed from the blood, and it happens so fast that the body doesn't have time to check the muscles and check the liver. The blood gets to a toxic level at such a rapid rate that all it cares about is getting that sugar out of the blood the best and fastest way it knows how, and that is to just go right into storage of fat on the body. So you have to think about it like this. If your body is a car, and you were to fill up the gas tank until the gas tank is full and it starts to have spillover, and for some reason the pump is broken and it just keeps spewing gas out, then you were to grab a gas tank and fill that up and put it in the back seat. But the gas is still spitting out. So you get another tank and another tank and another tank. Eventually the back seat is full, the passenger seat is full, the trunk is full, and you have to strap these gas tanks all over your car, increasing its size. Essentially, that's what gaining weight is. You're putting all this fuel in, and the gas tank is already full. So essentially, you're strapping all this fuel to your body. And that's what body fat is. It's strapped on fuel. Okay, follow me so far? Now we know what a glycemic index is. Now we know what insulin is and what glucagon is. And we know what macronutrients are, what carbohydrates do, what proteins do, and what fats do. So now we're going to take it just a little bit further. Now this process of storing body fat here can ultimately be reversed. Now how do we do that? Well, we're going to need to remove the sugar from the muscles. Now we can do that through exercise to enhance the removal of sugar from the muscles, or we can just remain in an overall caloric deficit and a carbohydrate deficit for an extended period of time. But exercise achieves this much, much faster than just lowering the calories. So once we remove the sugar from the muscles, then the body releases glucagon as a response to low blood sugar and causes the liver to release its sugar back into the muscles. Now, once it releases sugar back into the muscles and you continue to exercise, you then burn up all that sugar. So, what happens whenever your muscles are empty and your liver is empty of glucose or blood sugar? Well, then what your body has to do is start to convert body fat to a usable source of fuel. So essentially what happens is the fat starts to get removed from the body cells and it goes back into the liver. But it does this in so small amounts that the liver is never going to have spillover to go back into the body fat. It also can be broken down for the muscles as well. Again, it's not going to be at such a rate where the muscles are going to fill up totally, and it's not going to be at a rate that the liver is going to fill up totally. So as we begin to remove fat from the body to be used by the liver, to be used by the muscles, this is how we actually lose fat. But there's only one way to do that, and I'm going to show you here in a second. Okay, so first and foremost, if you want to remove fat from your body, that's going to require you to eat less calories than what you need to maintain your lifestyle. So if you're very, very active, you can eat more calories. That's a gray area. I'm very active, but I don't eat very many calories. And if you're sedentary, you need less calories. So your caloric consumption needs to be based upon your lifestyle. So first and foremost, if you're going to empty out this body fat storage, you're going to need to go into a caloric deficit, and you're going to need to do some exercise. So pretty much what this means is, if we want this to be emptied, we're going to have to not consume foods that bypass the muscles and bypass the liver and go right to body fat storage. Now, these are the foods that are known to do that. So if you consume corn in any form, it's going to go to the liver where it really rapidly goes to store as body fat. Okay, if you were to consume white potatoes, that's also going to go right to the body fat from the liver very, very, very fast. So it's going to briefly go through the liver and then right into body fat. Fruit. Now what most people don't know, and for some reason this is something that's like a bit of a folklore, is that fruit is so good for you. You got to have fruit. You got to get your vitamin C, blah, 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 blah. Most cruciferous vegetables, which is like broccoli, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, stuff like that, are going to have much more vitamin C than an orange. So something like that isn't even necessary to consume. As a matter of fact, it's a tropical food, and if you're Caucasian and you're watching this, you're not a tropical person, so your body's not going to know how to ingest that properly anyway. So, no fruit, no white potato, no corn, certainly no wheat. Wheat also bypasses the liver and goes straight to body fat storage. Not only that, the wheat that we have today was actually invented in the 60s for a food shortage. So it's highly modified and then genetically modified later on. Not only that, it causes a bad reaction in everyone's body. Now, some celiacs have a gluten intolerance, but I'd say most people have a gluten intolerance. Even if it doesn't bother you, a side effect is gaining body fat. So even if you don't have the gastrointestinal issues that a celiac is going to have, it's still going to make you store body fat. So you're going to stay away from wheat also. Obviously, you're going to stay away from all forms of sugar. If sugar is toxic to the human body, then if you ingest it in a state where it's already sugar, obviously that's going to be super high in the glycemic index, and your body's going to store that as fat. So we're going to stay away from these things. No corn, no white potato, no fruit, no wheat, and no sugar. If you get one thing from this video, and one thing only, I would hope that you were going to get this and follow it exactly. If you take these things out of your diet totally, you're going to see dramatic results. So if you look at the back of something and it has a high amount of sugar, over 5 grams per serving, you're not going to eat it, period. You're not going to eat corn, you're not going to eat white potatoes, you're not going to eat fruit, you're not going to eat wheat, you're not going to eat sugar, and you're going to make sure that none of the food that you consume has any of those ingredients in it. So we've already established that there's only one macronutrient that's going to cause fat gain, and that's going to be carbohydrates. Some carbohydrates are so low on the glycemic index that they're not actually going to cause an influx of blood sugar, and they're not going to cause storage as body fat. And those are green vegetables. Green vegetables are so low in the glycemic index that they don't have any real response from the pancreas to secrete insulin or elevate blood sugar. So that's going to be so low on the glycemic index or the GI rating that when you're consuming green vegetables, what residual is in there is just going to go to muscle storage. But it's never going to store the muscle so high that there's going to be spillover into the liver. So that's always a safe bet. What you're going to do by eating green vegetables is you're going to give the body just what it needs to fuel the workout, but not enough to store excess body fat. So you're going to virtually avoid this process of spillover from the muscles to the liver to body fat. So that's a safe bet. Now there are several other foods out there that do this, but if you want to be very simple and you want to follow this and make it work, then you're going to choose green vegetables. Okay? And yes, there are a lot of vegetables that aren't green that are acceptable, but for simplicity's sake and to not make this video a freaking hour long, we're going to say that green vegetables are going to be your main source of carbohydrates. Your main source. So now this information isn't a secret to you. And, you know, for most part, this isn't guarded in the industry, but most people don't promote this. Most nutritionists don't promote this, and I don't know why, but this is the secret as far as losing fat is concerned or stopping fat storage. And it's not too hard to understand, especially in the way I just broke it down. The secret is only eating low glycemic index carbohydrates. Only eating low glycemic index carbohydrates from the form of green vegetables. So if all your carbohydrates are low glycemic index in the form of green vegetables, then your body has no choice but to break down its fat for fuel in the liver and in the muscles. It's very, very simple. So by eliminating these things, sugars, white potatoes, corn, wheat, and fruit from your diet, you're going to virtually eliminate all high glycemic index foods, and you're only going to be consuming low glycemic index foods, and so your body's going to have to start removing fats. Now, if you've been paying attention, you know that I haven't gone too much into detail of proteins and fats. Well, because that pretty much takes care of itself. Now, if you're not an athlete looking to get into a certain physical performance level or a certain aesthetic physique level, then all you're going to really pay attention to is the carbohydrates, and you're going to get very, very good results. Now, as you get advanced and you have goals that are go beyond just leaning out and getting healthy, whether that be a performance level or a certain look, then you're going to need to get more in depth with the proteins and the fats. However, if you just want to get healthy and you want to lose some body fat and you want to maybe just start feeling better and doing the right thing, this is the way to go. You're going to eliminate these foods and only eat green veggies as a source of low glycemic index carbohydrates. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. There is a lot of healthy, moderate glycemic index carbohydrates out there. Yes, there is, but I don't want to make this an hour video, and I don't want to go too much into detail about those things. Not eating those things, however, isn't going to hurt you. So I can say only eat green vegetables as your source of carbohydrates, and don't eat any of these things. If these things are an ingredient in your food, they're going to promote fat storage. And once you get to a certain level of fat storage, disease is right behind, and many forms of disease as well. So, hopefully you got something from this video. Hopefully I broke it down in a way that everybody can understand, and hopefully you have a better idea of how we get fat and how to stop it. Thanks for watching. Please, please, please like and share this video with everyone. Everyone share this video. This is information that needs to get out there. Everybody needs to know the secret to losing fat and getting healthy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share.